And welcome back to Run the Terra. I'm just going to throw out episode 28 as a number and see where that gets me. Does that get me to the right
That,
number?
that is correct.
Hey, we did it. Today's podcast is going to be super light. Not really much happened in Runeterra since we last talked to you guys. Except for it's just entirely new region, and some of the cards are insane. There's new champions, and that was a classic Grandmaster Dan misdirect. Anyways, I am Grandmaster Dan.
I'm Adam Edelman Munoz.
And I'm Stan Jarzewski.
And today we'll be talking about the new region, Targon, of course, which we at Run the Terra are now dubbing Timmy Town, due in part to the large number of large-bodied creatures, big, beautiful creatures, I should say. And Timmy, if you don't know, is a kind of a classic magic term for just cards or a type of player who likes to do large splashy effects in card games, like sweeping the board and doing 1,000,000 damage with one creature, and a 500 overwhelm. That's the kind of thing a Timmy is right at home with. Targon's home to Celestials, Asol, just a bunch of huge beefiness, even beefier than Demacia. So let's talk about how Targon has affected, or at least the Targon release has affected the meta. What are we seeing on the ladder right now, Stan?
So we've kind of seen some ebbs and flows getting to where we are now. Targon was very much dominating the early days, one being the new hotness, and two because, admittedly, Celestials are pretty powerful. Being able to get a free card from your cards from a selection of pretty powerful stuff is really good. There's definitely some kind of variability to it, just because, some of the cards in the Celestial pool are definitely more valuable than others, and when you hit the really good ones, you can kind of take over the game pretty easily, and if you hit bad, you're adding just a little bit of value on top. Interestingly enough, we've kind of come back around, and some of the older concepts have been refitted or kind of started to shine in the face of these Targon cards. We have Demacia and Freljord's beefiness on their, beefiness per value. So Targon, you're getting, the biggest stuff you can get, but in Demacia and Freljord, you're still getting beef for a little bit more value. So they're kind of being able to control the early game and dominate the early game well enough that by the time Targon kind of gets online, they might be dead.
But basically slightly smaller cards for way smaller prices, and that's, lower mana costs. That's how you win this game.
Come to
every other game with a
Targon.
mana system.
Come to Timmy Town. We got the lowest prices in all of Runeterra.
Yep.
There we go.
But again, the meta's in a super state of flux right now, just because, so much just got injected into the game. There's a whole new region. There's a lot of stuff to try out. There's a lot of balancing that needs to be done. Another thing that I think really drove the meta in the direction that it's in right now is cards that do things immediately. So a lot of your Noxus cards, things like Arachnoid Sentry that stun on entry, Riptide Rex, Zap Sprayfin from Bilgewater, all of these cards that kind of come down and do something immediately or just have solid stats from the get-go, like your Demacia cards, are also doing really well because Hush is definitely one of the most powerful cards to come in from Targon.
Or at least one of the most unique.
One of the most unique, and
One of the most meta warping, I would say.
Meta warping is, I guess, definitely the best way to put it. It very much narrows down what is viable. Toward the beginning, people were trying out new elusive decks, things like that, and Hush just says, no, these decks don't work. On top of that, Targon adding in a bunch of really good healing kind of changed the face of aggro a little bit, which is why something like Misfortune Scouts is your top aggro deck, because while it's not as fast as old aggro decks were, its general beef lets it carry on a little bit longer than normal.
But isn't like half that deck vulnerable to Hush?
No, not really. It's all just
entirely.
good. It's good value
I
stats.
mean, let's see.
Like, what
Bright
do you
Steel
like?
Protector, War Chief, Grizzled Ranger, Bannerman, Genevieve Elmhart,
So
and Riposte back to back. That is half the deck.
so
I have listed off half the cards in that deck.
yeah, so not entirely because these are like reactive pieces that get reacted back to Hush. The point is the cards themselves, even if they Hush target, something the one time, um, this particular deck keeps fighting through Hush.
You
I
also
guess
still
somewhat
have.
notably, those are all cards that where, other than Grizzled Ranger, those are cards where like if you Hush
need-
it, you take off some stats, but it's still like an okay card at base.
You still have
Yes.
a better than you still have better than average, or at least average power to CMC ratio, and also a lot of their stuff is reactive stuff to other things, not like it's very rare that you're gonna Hush. Probably the only thing of that list I would like Hush and be like, oh, okay, like consistently be like Bright Steel, but like having Hush plus a creature up to block for the thing, that's a lot. Honestly, that's a lot to ask. Like, yeah,
As
which is
opposed
part of
to-
why I think like it's part of why I think like Hush was big for like maybe 5 days, and now like a lot of these decks are just like a lot of the decks at the top are just the decks that can deal with Hush the best, and then Hush is just gone. But it's definitely still like very meta warping.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say probably the most vulnerable to Hush deck at the top of the meta right now is They Who Endure, just because their win condition is vulnerable to Hush. That's
To be fair,
probably
that's like their backup win condition, right? I mean, They Who Endure wins
Yeah, I
half
don't-
their games or more without a They Who Endure.
Yeah, I
That's- yeah.
kind of disagree just because that deck is just so aggro, and like it's honestly I just disagree because of Stalking Shadows and that
That's
other
fair.
Nightfall card. There's just so much more card advantage in that deck that I think you can beat out a little bit of trickery for a turn or two.
Yeah.
I think Hush is like it's shaken up the meta, but now it's kind of gone. So I'm wondering if we're gonna have like a counter sort of lashback, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
I think where I've landed is every deck should respect Hush, but Hush is not going to break games.
I agree.
yeah, not entirely. I mean, it depends on what you're playing. There are some like again. I was trying out the Elusive Shadow combo deck, and it just like Hush eats that deck for breakfast because by the time you can generate enough damage, they can Hush 2 or 3 of your elusives, and then like chump blocking is just not a valid thing to do. Once your cards can be chump blocked, the deck loses all of its potential damage.
I do think it is keeping like a Lulu deck down pretty hard, like almost exclusively, because Hush really annihilates Lulu. I mean,
That's
like
fair. I guess if your
since
deck is
she's
completely blanked by Hush, you're in trouble.
yeah, so she in like the way that her supportability works just makes it so that you want to put that 1/1 right next to her, so that it turns into a 4/4, and then it just gets eaten. And like, yeah, you're only eating a 1/1, but you can also just pop her for the barrier, so like her flip with picks is like deleted effectively.
You're also
Like-
not eating the 1/1. You're eating the 1/1 and the Lulu buff.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
which is huge.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I think that card's single-handedly keeping Lulu in tier 2. Like, I don't know if she's necessarily the most powerful aggro deck, but she's definitely, I think without Hush, she'd probably be more powerful than the Scouts, or at least she's definitely she's more aggressive than Scouts.
Yeah, that's
and
for
still
sure.
very resilient.
That's for sure.
That does
But-
make her a fairly good tournament deck, right? If you
I
can
agree.
ban out your opponent's Targon deck, if
Yeah.
you're a ban structure, or just avoid it with pick strategy,
Yeah.
then you're left
Conquest
without
style,
that
yeah.
vulnerability, and you can kind of go super ultra all in.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very good point for all the tournament players listening to our podcast.
All 2 of you.
It's
Now,
us.
To me, the most interesting thing in the meta is for the first time, a janky combo deck has actually gotten to the point of viability.
We did it, folks.
So there is an infinite combo deck. The question now really is, and it hasn't quite proven itself to be anything beyond tier 3. I mean, just there are better things to do once you've hit turn 10. But on turn 10, 2 Zephyr Sages and a Revitalizing Roar is infinite 4/4s. And if you've activated an Avarosan Hearthguard, before one of those Zephyr Sages come down, that's infinite 5/5s. And you just every turn you fill your board with 5/5s, you swing, block, do whatever you need to do, refill your board with 5/5s. It's a pretty solid kill condition. I mean, just it's obnoxious as hell to deal with for sure. But the deck's got a decent amount of healing too to stay alive until turn 10, and a pretty decent amount of healing to kind of get you through that last little early game until your 5/5s can stabilize. But you know, there are a few other things that, you know, get around it pretty decently. If you're still on like some Dreadway, like, well, even then, like Dreadway, fucking your boy, big Ledros, isn't even necessarily the best condition here, because by the time you're doing that, they're, you know, already swinging at you with a ton of 5/5s. But you know, there are some other.
You need to be enlightened for that, right? So it's a turn 10 combo unless they hit ramp.
You need to be turn 10. Yeah.
Does that deck even run any ramp? It looks like it doesn't.
No, this one's not ramp. It's possible that maybe like tuning it to ramp is what makes it better, but I don't think the ramp tools are quite good enough.
I mean, ramp is still kind of bad in this game. You know, guaranteeing a mana means that every time you play a ramp card, you're just throwing away a card.
Yeah. Asol ramp was getting pretty close. Like bringing out an Asol.
It is tier 3. It's getting there. Yeah.
I guess it's just like I feel like there are better ways to get Asol out, right?
Oh yeah, no, I mean just playing him on turn 10 is pretty much good enough.
You've got enough tools to keep yourself alive in Targon.
Yeah, I mean, look at every single Karm deck. Or I guess Karma deck in general. But yeah, that's kind of not exactly a mea culpa, but that's kind of our thoughts on Hush. What of our gut reactions of Targon in general? How's it feel, you know, in your soul? Timmy Town, if you will.
You know, I'm particularly shaken by Targon because I've had too many people invoke too many meteors, and it's just bad. Like, god damn it, why did you get a meteor every single time? Been a little frustrating, but I mean, that's kind of your RNG, baby. I do think the Celestial Pool is like, you know, it's definitely a little closer to a Hearthstone-y mechanic, but it's definitely not so bad that it's like warping the, oh my god, what in the world Celestial card did he? I need to warp my whole game plan around this, or oh my god, he played that Celestial card, this is a complete and utter blowout. You have a pretty decent feel for like what's gonna happen. And especially since some of them, you know, do pretty specific selections of Celestial cards.
Yeah, I mean, any Celestial card that calls out a mana cost calls out specifically 3, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
right.
3, like specifically 3, and then 7 or more for star shaping.
Okay, so I guess that's 7, 8, 9, 10 for star shaping, so there's 4 there.
Yeah. Same thing with Asol, creates big boy Celestial cards in hand on his flip.
So that means that for the lower cost ones, there's a 50-50 chance for any specific Celestial card, and it's 3 out of 8 for the higher cost ones, because there's 2 at each cost. And additionally, if you consider that there are 2 different removal spells that cost 7+, your odds of finding a removal spell are pretty high. So
extremely
it sounds
high,
weird.
Yeah.
It sounds weird to say, but Celestial invoking is actually fairly consistent.
Yeah,
I agree. That's kind of my problem with it. I mean, like this mechanic is not my favorite thing. I don't really like it or dislike it. It's like I'm not like an anti-RNG guy. I don't really care, but like I think it's almost too consistent for what it feels like it should be. But maybe that wasn't their point in the first place. But it does feel like they get a lot of tricks or a lot of tools of the trade. All while and with the floor just being raw card advantage. I mean, I guess some of these are just kind of bad. Like, I wouldn't really call. I mean, Crescent Strike is tempo advantage almost exclusively. Some of these lower cost ones are just exclusively tempo advantage. But in general, it does feel, I don't know, a little silly, but I think it's fine. I mean, like, you do have to go through quite a bit of hoops to get it, and there are just better card value engines than Celestial. Maybe not in Expeditions. Like, in Expeditions, I do feel like I just want to go into Targon every time.
Oh,
But,
okay. Yeah, Expedition is a different beast, and actually I think
Yeah.
that speaks a lot to how Targon works.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like looking at Targon's tools, we talked a bit about how kind of Leona seemed kind of clunky, and both Daybreak and Nightfall seemed a bit clunky and a bit off curve and kind of hard
Right.
to dedicate an entire deck to, and how the Celestials were a bit random and kind of hard to dedicate an entire deck to. And I think that my gut reaction to Targon has been thus far that it's got a lot of good cards, but not a lot of good decks.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, I look at these Targon cards and it's like, if I could move two of these cards to another region, I could break that region. And it doesn't matter what the other region I'm talking about is, right? For every region, there's something I want to borrow from Targon.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Comets. Like, yes, Obliterate has been a mechanic in the game since day one, but I feel like I've never cared about Obliterate until the past 4 days. Like, and I've seen it so many times now, even though it's
'Cause
on,
there are,
like, I
like,
think
what?
another 6 cards.
2 ways of obliterating things before this.
I think it's like
there was.
yeah, maybe it's like 3 or 4. There's that one of the genders that does surviving,
Yeah.
and then there's isn't there like a Demacia card as well? And I feel like there might be 2 Demacian cards.
So
And there's like
Demacia cards that
maybe
obliterates. There's Detain in Demacia.
that's what I'm thinking of.
There's definitely another
Is it Shadow
obliterate
Isles?
card.
I'm just gonna look it up. You know,
Um,
we're gonna type it into the old type-a-rooney, into the old head. Oh, there's that sea monster that does it.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah, there's She Who Wonders, and there's the sea monster. Yeah, for some reason I thought there was one in Demacia, but there's not.
Oh, there's also Passage Unearned from Shadow Isles.
That's brand new.
Which is
Yes, brand new.
yeah.
And that's a nice little sideboard card.
Awesome.
Yeah, so and of course now Comets. So I guess that's fair that it feels like it, but like that card is just so good compared to like that's the card that in general I'm most scared of them pulling, because it's like if it's just a big finisher, it's like whatever, that's what they were banking on, that's why they made this deck. But if it's an Obliterate, I'm like, crap, there goes my game plan. Like now I actually have to like try to win a different way.
I found that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm mostly playing control decks, so I can afford to kind of sit back and react to what they get. But I found it isn't too hard to play around Comets.
Yeah.
Either because I have a better win con in like Ledger's Atrocity, Ezreal combo. There are a lot of better win cons out there than just big dudes. Or because you can do something cute like, deny it if you're in Ionia, or like if I'm in Shadow Isles, I'm often holding not Vile Feast, the other one. Shoot, I completely forgot the name of the
Glimpse
card.
Beyond.
Yes, a Glimpse. You just hold the Glimpse for the Obliterate, and then they don't obliterate your Ledros or whatever.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean this was all pretext on the fact that I was playing Expeditions still as well, because
Sorry. I keep forgetting we're talking that Expeditions are just a completely different beast.
Yeah,
Targon's nutty in Expeditions.
I've honestly not encountered Targon at all on the ladder, and I've played like 30 games since it came out. Like I think I saw like one ASOL deck, but they didn't even like play a Targon card because I was just playing aggro. Like they just didn't even get to it. Like they played like a Celestial Invoker on like 4 and then they died. So they're not, like Adam said, they're not doing much on the ladder right now.
I have seen some Tark builds I like. Tark Ezreal and
there's some interesting
the like
builds.
Noxus Tark something.
Yeah, and maybe we could segue this into things we'd like to see coming up, deck ideas we'd like to see from Targon, or deck archetypes we thought were going to hit with Targon that we want to see. Like for me, for example, I'd love to see some sort of weird little like aggro Delver type deck with what's her name, Diana, and like maybe like a Delver type strategy with her or something. That'd be really fun. Maybe throw Terra in there too, because so it's not full Delver. But I just like the idea of just like a massive challenger for a striker, just attacking turn after turn. That seems awesome.
Do you think you'd want to pair that with Ionia or with like Shadow Isles, Piltover's On?
For some reason, I had Demacian. Oh, because of standalone. Yeah, no, I think I'd rather have something else. I don't know.
I just feel like
You need
Targon's
to.
lacking in removal, so if you want to be in the Delver, you have to be in a
Yeah,
region that has
that's
removal or
true.
something close to it in Ionia.
Yeah, and you need to have something that can cast two spells consistently in one turn, as well, or at least cast like a small spell plus a creature or something.
Hmm.
Probably, I could see PNZ. There's a lot of like extra little buff spells in there, and also kill spells. Yeah,
As a general rule, if I don't know what to add to a deck, I add
just
PNZ.
PNZ. Yeah, that's fair. I can
Hmm.
also see Shadow Isles because there's Nocturne, which also benefits from Nightfall type stuff.
Yeah, he's a guy who
Um,
hasn't shown up too much.
yeah, he's really good though. I do like the effect he does.
I mean, I've been loving like when I see a Nocturne deck on ladder, I almost always think that the deck is like 8 busted Shadow Isles cards and then the rest trash.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And like I don't know what the right other half of that deck is, but
Yeah,
it needs something.
yeah. I think it's still brewing. Hopefully, because I was hoping for a couple more archetypes. There's still not really a Delver type
Yeah.
strategy in this game. There's like whisperings of it, but it feels more like it's just like kind of storm stuff than
Shit, now I
Delver
want to
stuff.
build like Nocturne PZ, like sorry, Piltover's On. I should probably avoid using the Z nomenclature when I'm talking about
Yeah.
this game. Yeah, Nocturne Piltover's
Yeah.
On, like just kind of tempo nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. I could also like it'd be so much because like that's a what is it like a 3-drop 4-drop and it's like a 5/3 fearsome like that's insane like that's so insane.
Yeah, Nocturne's a 4.
So good. Oh, so good. Like he can just. Anyways, what are some decks y'all want to see, or some archetypes y'all are hoping to get out of this?
Hmm, what are we missing now? Um. Hmm.
Stan's really thinking on this one. How about you, Adam?
Um, I I think that I want to see more Lulu. Like the Lulu
Yeah.
deck thus far looks real strong, but also looks like hasn't been played much. I want to push Lulu, see what we can do with that.
Do you want to go up the curve or down the curve? I guess
Down
she's
the
already
curve. I think I want to be fast with Lulu.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's probably already down the curve as much as you can be. So I think probably just staying down there is
Yeah.
about where you want to be.
I mean, like Lulu Demacia is where we are right now. I think that's a good idea.
I think that's correct.
But
Yeah.
like I almost wonder if there's a better line to be found in like Lulu Targon, just utilizing the very aggressive good Targon low drops. You know,
What are the good low drops? I guess
Solari
there's that
Soldier, the Diana
Yeah.
Daybreak package, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I could see that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because when you're playing on curve with that deck, yeah, you get the extra little benefit. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, it's a little bit variant, but
You probably use
that's
Terra
what you
as your
have to
champion
expect.
despite using the Daybreak package, but that's like fine.
Yeah, that's
Morning
fine.
Light's still a good card for that deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've that's one thing. Great card I found in Expedition, Broken Light. Wowee. I mean, I never mind playing that card even if I don't have any Daedric abilities on board. Well, that's not true. I want to have at least one. But like pair that with Robin. There was one time where I had like Robin and got a double Morning Light off, Morning Light, and then hit a Morning Light again off of it, and then got another card. It was like plus four,
Oh,
plus
God.
4. So yeah, it was so good. It's really good. Yeah, Stan, what about you, man? What's a little archetype you'd want to see?
You know, the thing that I think this game is missing right now is a nice little Fizz Teemo combo deck that just uses those little tricky boys to aggro out because they're nowhere to be seen right now. Them and
Well, it's
What's-
because they're so far. It's because they're so close to the ground. You can't see them.
that's true. They're
Dude,
playing their own
Fizzy
game out there.
Gems is an archetype that could be
Fizzy
really
Gems is a
interesting.
good idea.
Yeah, Fizzy Gems could get really good really fast.
Yeah, I was just thinking pairing. What is Teemo in Ionia? PNZ.
PNZ.
Shit,
Pairing-
the Fizzy Gems deck needs to be named Pop Rocks.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good.
That's really good. Okay,
But
well,
that
we
would
just got,
so
we
that would put
got
Fizz
an
in
extreme idea.
that put
We
Fizz
gotta
in
write that one down.
Targon. So you'd probably want to pair him with either Diana or Tarek.
Pops.
Um,
All right, got that one saved in for a stream, guys. We're doing Fizzy Pop soon.
I could see Tarek Fizz being kind of interesting.
Oh,
Pass
yeah,
some
it's pop
buffs
rocks.
onto a Fizz.
Does that count as casting? Because if so, that's 2 spells for the price of 1.
What's that? Sorry. What are we
well,
talking about?
We need to test it. Test
Yeah.
test to the lab, boys.
Yep. You'll find out some stuff about some Tarek Lee Sin and your boy. Another card that I think is still like just sees play thrown into decks. I think that people don't have a slot for, but might need some form of archetype at some point. Is Lucian still hasn't gotten enough love. He's always been on the fringes
That's
through
true.
this whole game.
Yeah.
Dude,
we need
I have a mildly successful Demacia Noxus aggro deck that Lucian helms really well.
Yeah,
And you're
that's
just
the
like,
story of
we're not
Lucian's
using him because
life,
he's
though.
good. We're using him because he's a 3/2 first strike.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Quick strike
kind
or
of the
whatever it's
story of his
called.
life.
quick attack.
It's like, hey, this is pretty good. It's got Lucian in it. It's pretty good. That's just the story of his life, you know. Like
Yeah.
he went to prom and his date was like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like I didn't get to go with Jeffrey, but going with you was pretty good, Lucian. You know, that's just been his whole life story. So
Yeah.
I want to find something where it's like, I want someone to look at my Lucian deck like Lucian looks at Senna. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like
Oof.
that's what I want.
I want
Oh.
someone to look at my Lucian deck the way Lucian looks at Thresh.
There it
Oh
is.
God, no!
I
Stop.
want my Lucian deck the way
Oh
that
wait, I
Thresh
get it.
looks
Never
at
mind.
Sona.
That's fine. Well,
So,
yeah. So that's I guess some of our deck archetype ideas. Definitely write into us if you have your own listeners at home. You can write into us at 123 Run the Terra Street. I'm sure we'll get your mail. Yeah. So what else? I think we wanted to talk a bit about. I got this note on our list here: broken cards v broken decks. And I think, Adam, maybe you can helm that discussion because I think this was your idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on this slightly when we were talking about, or I did at least, the way the Targon decks have shaken out and they don't really have any decks.
Yeah.
A lot of cards in Targon look objectively strong, right? You know, just you running down the curve. Solari Soldier on 1 is one of the best 1-drops. Solari Shieldbreaker on 2 is one of the best 2-drops.
Yep.
Crescent Guardian is like a perfectly solid 3-drop. And just as you move up the curve, the same is true at most slots. You've got a good or great option at that slot. And for the most part, that's good, right? These are good cards. They contribute somewhat. They contribute well to the decks they're in. But what they don't do is they don't give you a direction, right? You know, what are these cards good at? Being played the first thing in your turn? That's not a plan, that's just a thing you do.
Or the second sometimes.
Or the second, right? If it's a Nightfall card. Again, it's not a plan, right? Consider,
Right.
on the other hand, the classic Demacia Bannerman deck, right?
Yeah.
The key thing that deck did is that not only were its cards good, they were all good in the same way and in a strategic way, right? They weren't just good if you played them first. They're good
Synergy.
they were good because they added stats to the board,
Yeah.
right? So you would play War Chefs, and that would make something bigger so that you could trade better. And then you'd play Bannerman, and it would further make things bigger. And then you'd play Sithria to top it all off, and it would just everything was bigger, right?
Yeah.
So it led to a kind of cohesive plan, right? And the deck was good when you could get over what your opponent was doing, and the deck was bad when your opponent just killed your stuff.
Yeah.
So Targon's cards, a lot of them are good on their own, but they don't build well on each other,
Yeah.
right? Very few of the Nightfall cards do something to help your Nightfall plan, and like there's one elusive card in Nightfall, right? There's not there's one elusive card, one overwhelm card. There are a lot of Nightfall cards that do things, and they do them efficiently, but they don't do the same thing, right? When you play a deck like this, you don't end up with a cohesive plan, and so it's hard to get that kind of multiplicative strength.
Yeah, that's also true of Daybreak. Like, Daybreak only has one card that cares about Daybreak. Ravoon, or whatever, the Daylight Spear, and that's a great card, but yeah, there's only one of them that cares about Daybreak. Otherwise, you're just playing a pile. I mean,
and even then, he just, like, makes your other Daybreak cards always hit their Daybreak. It doesn't, like... Right. I mean, actually, the only one I think that really works well is Morning Light, which triggers all Daybreak effects at once, right? Because there, at least, you have... It rewards you for playing Daybreak cards.
Absolutely.
But that's the only payoff. I guess, I mean, kind of Leona, but every champion has a payoff for playing the right deck.
I do feel like Targon, and this is a bit of an aside, but Targon feels like what a 4-color Leovold pile deck player would be like. Oh, this is good. This is good. This is good design. Because it's just like all these cards are just like good on their face, but it's like what are any of them doing? Like they're just good. They're just good rate, good spells. It's just a pile player's dream.
This was a discussion about Magic for those of you who don't immediately recognize what we're talking about. And so circling back, I also think Targon is not helped by the way Invoke works, right? Invoke is moderately consistent, but it's not 100% consistent, right? So if you can, if you get the card, your best card half the time, and something similar to your best card like 80% of the time, that's good, right? That means that most of the time you're getting approximately what you want, but it doesn't help you build synergy. Right, if you want, like, say you're an elusive deck, right? Or you're trying to build a kind of Nightfall elusive deck with some invokes, and you want the Immortal Fire, which is the 8-drop elusive Phoenix Celestial. You're gonna get that, less than half the time when you invoke an 8-drop. And the other cards you get are fine, but they're not gonna advance your game plan. Exactly, they're not elusive. Yes, is the Great Beyond elusive? It is. Okay, there are 2 elusives up top. Never mind. So your odds are slightly better. They get to above 50 that way, but they're still not still not 100%. You still can whiff. And if your core game plan is already not well reinforced and can whiff, you're left with cards that are solid. And I think this is why Terra has been getting the most play, or at least I think the most successful play of the champions for.
I certainly wouldn't say that. I'd say Tarek is, like, he's got the most synergistic play, but it's still like Tarek in particular is the deck most hit by Hush. So until Hush is answered, Tarek is still Tarek is in a really rough spot.
Yeah, I think on the ladder of all the Targon champions, though, probably
is it Leona then?
It's mostly because it's usually Leona someone else.
Right,
I mean, this is all anecdotal because I've probably seen them all about represented equally. Except for I've actually only seen.
Go ahead.
I don't think I've actually ever seen Diana on the ladder, but the other ones I've seen all like 2 or 3 times. But I would agree that I think Tarek is probably the one that would be played the most, just because it actually has a cohesive strategy built around it. Already.
Perhaps my sample set was biased. I felt like I'd seen Tarek and Leona the most, and like. Leona gives you a plan when you didn't have one in the Daybreak deck, which is kind of nice. But Tarek has a plan built in, right? Tarek turns... Tarek and the Gems package, like, they build on each other in a way most of the rest of Targon doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, they build on each other so much that literally Swim tried to make a deck with Ezreal because of them, because they're such a cohesive... They're such a, like, tightly bounded idea. That he's like, well, this also works with this tightly bounded idea. Let me try it, and it's like it almost works. Like it's not like it's definitely a meme, but it's almost a viable meme, or excuse me, a viable meme.
That's another consideration, where what you can cross over with. A lot of the Targon cards, and especially the non-Tarek Targon champions, are fairly insular, right? There are no other Daybreak cards. Only one region has Nightfall, so Diana is either locked into playing with Shadow Isles, or you just are accepting that you're not going all in on that plan.
I think,
there's no other region with Celestials, so A Soul's Celestial game plan doesn't really get well supported.
There's two more set droppings of Targon, because it feels like they could have stagger released Bilgewater over 5 years and been fine, but it feels like Targon needed to all get dropped at once because like of how insular these things are. Like Bilgewater immediately played well with everything, and that's great. But like to me, it's fine to have a region that is, if it does have a synergistic strategy, it is very much locked into that one region. Like that's fine by me. But it just makes it awkward with the set release when you're like, oh, there's only like 89 or what is it, even like 60 new cards in this set, and there's only like 5 of them that go together. But I'm sure in the next 2 sets we'll get a lot more of them.
So if I might, I think Bilgewater was helped a bit by what things Bilgewater is good at. Bilgewater has very good card draw and damage, and those can be paired with almost anything.
Right.
Which helps. Also, Bilgewater was pairing with a slightly smaller set, so Bilgewater nearly doubled the size of the expansion. So even when you didn't have new, Bilgewater felt like a bigger change in Smart, in part, not in Smart. Words are hard.
That's
In part because what was happening with Bilgewater was we were seeing all the cards at once, and even if we didn't play new cards in literal new Bilgewater cards, we still got new cards for Ionia, and part of having the smaller expansions is Bilgewater, Demacia, Noxus, and what was the fourth one? Piltover and Zaun only got 2 cards each. So that means that those regions didn't expand naturally and can only expand in their crossover, right? So
right.
Piltover Zaun plus Targon is 1 or maybe 2 decks. Noxus plus Targon, 1 or maybe 2 decks. Whereas with Bilgewater, you had new decks in every region with every other region. In Targon, you have half the regions get very few new decks.
Yeah,
right.
And honestly, a lot of things that are running Targon are mostly just splashing something from another region.
Right.
A lot of the Targon decks right now, I mean, minus Terra, really want their Mountain Scryers hitting the Allegiance. So,
that's fair, right? The Allegiance cards lead to certain deck building, and Targon's Allegiance card is strong.
Yep.
Yeah, very strong.
So, even though Targon has pairings with other decks, it's still mostly it's just a Targon deck with this splash because this is the best for that little Targon plan. If you look at there is a Diana Leona deck, the Dayfall Nightfall combo.
Day and night. What?
It's running Freljord for 2 Omen Hawks and a Fury in the north, or whatever combination of those. And a lot of the cards...
Before, folks.
Some things never change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then it's a lot of the same cards as Aurelion Soul Ramp, just Aurelion Soul Ramp runs 3 Trundles, a few other... Actually, sorry, Aurelion Soul Ramp doesn't run whatchamacallit, because it needs too many Freljord cards. What was the other one I was looking at? The other deck that is running... I've seen versions of Aurelion Soul Ramp that go a lot harder into the Targon side. The ones
I've seen some A-Soul Thresh like that as well.
Yeah.
That's right. They run a few Thresh cards, a few removal cards in Shadow Isles, and then just A-Soul and the Celestial stuff.
Does Thresh pull to Battlefield? I can't remember.
He does.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's almost Reanimator. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the closest thing I think this game has to a Reanimator type strategy.
Actually, yeah.
Sort of like a cheating Reanimator strategy, at least.
Crap. That's pretty strong. Yeah. But yeah, sorry. I think looking at decks earlier, there was a lot more stuff that was leaning into Mountain Scryer a little bit harder. It looks like that's kind of tapered off just a bit. But again, with Mountain Scryer being a very powerful Allegiance card, Targon Splash X is a very powerful strategy type. And, whether that Targon Splash something is to run Leona and Diana, or it's to run, just stall out to your boy Asol. Like we've talked about, you don't even need to ramp to Asol necessarily. Your deck just needs to get you there, and Targon offers plenty of tools to get you there. Stable blockers, stable card advantage from Invoke, and then tons and tons of life gain. I mean, one of the best life gain cards in the game right now is for sure Star Shaping. Star Shaping is an immensely powerful card.
Yeah.
And just... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I to like completely shift gears, but also to like wrap a bow on all of this, like I've been playing a lot of expeditions lately because I realized I had 13 expedition tokens, and I was like, oh, I guess I should probably start cracking into these. So I've been like doing a ton of those, and if I see Targon in my first 3, I just grab it. It doesn't even matter like what those 3 cards are, and I think that's because of what Adam was talking about, because this is just a pile of cards where it's like, oh yeah, these are good. And it's like, that's all Expedition is. It's just like, oh yeah, these are good. And also the part of it too is that with Ladder, you kind of are in sort of a tightly knit, dare I say, incestuous community that's just like, you kind of know what you're going up against. And so it's not, even though it is fairly consistent, there's also that level of like, I kind of need to know what cards, like, there's a specific set of cards that I need to answer a specific set of problems. Whereas in Expeditions, you go into a game, you might see a guy with 40 Bright Steel barriers, and you're like, well, shit. Or Bright Steel protectors, you're like, well, shit, I need to deal with that. Like, and Targon allows you to like completely switch your game plan on the fly, kind of partly because it doesn't really have any game plan. It just has good cards, and it's got a little bit of everything in there. And so why not make that one of your 2 regions?
Suited to swapping your game plan.
That's, to me, that's the biggest reason why, because Invoke is just, it's card advantage plus effectively a sideboard in your main deck. And it's like, oh shit, okay, that's really good for a game where you might go up against 40 Teemos. It was like, and then the very next game you go up against a guy playing like 17 Asols. It's like, okay, like this is perfect. Yeah. But to me, that's what Targon's all about. And I think that's kind of, and so, I think that's kind of the issue we have to figure out is like, how do we, I guess we just wait and see for the next cards coming up. But it just feels like right now, I guess understandably so, it just feels very disjointed. And again, I think it's just because we haven't seen enough cards. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when is it coming out?
So let's see. The last ones came out on the 7th,
it's the 16th, I think,
the
or something?
16th. 16th was 16th. Sunday, so I think it was the 17th, 18th that week, or was it the 13th?
Yeah, I think it was 18th.
Thursday.
There's something. Yeah, I think it was like 18th.
Gosh,
or
we've
something
already
like
forgotten. It's been not that long.
I've just been my brain's been hushed too many times.
So if it's been, I'm just gonna roughly say it's been 2 weeks because time is an illusion.
Probably.
If it's been 2 weeks, then that means we've got 6 weeks to wait for the next set of cards, and that'll bring us 2 new Targon, or 1 or 2 new Targon champions. Targon got 4.
How many new Targon cards?
So it'll bring us a new Targon champion, probably 10 or so cards from Targon, and then a new champion for 2 other regions, which are like potential synergy partners for Targon as well.
Right.
So I think just in general, we're not too far off seeing some more flexibility, some more options emerging for a lot of decks too, right? Not only will we see new options to like pair Targon with Noxus, we'll also see a completely new Noxus champion who will give us some options to pair with everyone. I don't know where Riven's going to be good if it is in fact Riven, but she's going to have at least 2 decks that she kind of can be tried in, and maybe one of those will hit, and we'll see some stuff.
Yeah. Looking at it, like Targon actually basically has the same number of cards as some of these earlier ones. Like, it's got 14 less than Demacia, but if you count the Celestials, it kind of doesn't. It actually has more. So it does feel weird that I do feel like it's just so disjointed, and maybe that's also we are just forgetting the fact that this has only been out for, we think, 2 weeks. Someone can certainly fact check us on that, but Yeah, we just haven't, because we were just talking about what decks we'd love to still see happen, and we were like thinking up new stuff right here. I mean, maybe we just haven't figured it out yet, but it still feels like from a bird's eye view, there is just there's a bit of a, they're just kind of lost in the stars, so to speak.
It's possible there's some community weakness going on here, right? Like, I could probably have said similar stuff about, like, Ionia in the early days, right? And I guess Ionia was about elusives in the early days.
Well, we said that about Freljord, I think, quite a bit, right?
Freljord, yes, there we go. That's what we were talking. We talked about Freljord not having an identity for quite a while, and now,
do we feel like Freljord has figured out its strategy? I mean,
it's kind of hitched its post to the Sedge game plan.
Which feels like it's just, which again feels just like a broken card. At least to me. I mean, like, that card just feels
Sedge as a card
so much better than any other champion.
It's kind of doing the Demacia thing of beefy boys, but rather than supplement it with, like, Challenger and Barrier and defending your beefy boys, it just kills everything with, like, Avalanche and damage.
Frostbiting
like,
everything.
A bit like harsh Demacia. Whereas Demacia is like, our guys are big and really hard to kill.
Kind of, yeah.
Freljord is, our guys are big and everything is going to die.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess it has sort of honed in. And maybe that's part of the issue too, is that, like, a lot of these decks are usually very champion driven, and so we just haven't, because none of these champions give us, like, that perfect hone-in strategy, we haven't been able to find it. Because, like, you look at Sedge, you pretty much know what you're doing. You look at Fiora, you know exactly what you're doing. Karma, but besides Tarek, I mean, like, you kind of know what you're doing with, like, Diana, but it's like you don't really have the pairings for this card.
With Diana, what you're doing is playing the Nightfall cards. It's still, like we said, that's not a game plan, that's just a set of cards.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of the issue, I think.
I mean,
as everything's just so champion based.
I mean, I think it's somewhat telling that, for example, Elise decks don't just jam every card that says Spider on it.
Right, that's true. That's very true.
Elise's game plan is
it's low to the ground cards.
To be a 2/3 fearsome.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I think it's possible that there's just some refinement to do, right? It's still kind of the early days of the meta. It's been probably 2 weeks. I'm enjoying this. It's been probably 2 weeks, which means that people are figuring out what's going on, and, like, that also means that things that we already know how they work are easier to make happen. Right? It's very easy to put together the MF Bannerman deck because it's a bunch of good. It's just a bunch of good Demacian cards. It's been around forever.
Yeah.
Similar, so, like, it's easy to fall back on what we know. It's hard to make something new, especially when it has to fight against other things that we know. It is. Think about rotation in Magic, right? If for those of you who do not play Magic, Magic has been out such a long time that if you played with every card, the game would break into very aggressively. So the most popular and kind of most competitive Magic format is called Standard, which uses only the last 2 years worth of cards. And then at every year break, so every fall, which is when they kind of turn things over, a year's worth of cards rotate out and are no longer playable, and you pick up a new set worth of cards. So rotation, any deck that doesn't lose a bunch of cards is very strong for the first week after rotation, but then after that you get some adaptation.
That's true.
In Legends, we didn't even have rotation, right? No decks went away. I mean, Sedge Ash got nerfed, but even so, that was one deck.
Not enough.
the rest of the deck stayed around, right? Yeah. And they, were tried and true. They got to test themselves against Targon, and some of them didn't even get new cards, right? If your deck was a Bilgewater Noxus deck, you got 4 new potential cards that spoke to very specific strategies.
Yeah.
So a lot of decks didn't really get tested and didn't need to get tested to maintain to stay strong. And I think that it is possible that we just haven't quite seen the best way to beat them yet. So I'm not going to count Targon out yet.
Yeah, it is kind of just like, hey, let me just go ahead and slap 0 new cards into my Swain TF deck and take it on the ladder and get to platinum. Like, it has literally 0 new cards. I think like that Endure deck has Stalking Shadows and Unspeakable Horror. I think that's like really the only 2 new cards that are in the S tier decks right now. That are new. Everything else is just like, oh, yeah, this is just the same S tier from the same S tier top tier from last cycle, which is there's honestly it's fine with me because most of these decks are fun to play. There's enough diversity, yada yada. But
I'll do you one better. Ash Sedge has only 3 cards from Bilgewater expansion in their Sedge.
Ooh,
Sorry, 2.
Nice.
Nice. This deck has been around for a long time.
Although now I'm seeing that it is switching towards Gangplank. So,
oh, that's kind of interesting.
Ooh, a little spiciness. Spiciness coming.
There's also going like Turbo Sedge and playing like Prowling Cutthroats and Jagged Bushers and Twisted Fates to just ensure that damage every single turn.
Which I really like
cards
that
from
as
the
an
Bilgewater
idea.
expansion.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah,
that is a heavy Bilgewater deck.
That seems like a very fun deck, absolutely. I'm definitely in for going faster, things zooming. Zoomers, we need to start appealing to them. So anything that goes fast or hyper or turbo, we definitely need to start looking into that. Speaking of, be on the lookout for our hyper aggro deck, Pop Rocks. We'll be streaming at some point soon, for sure.
Asterisk.
Absolutely for sure. No problem. Some terms apply. Conditions may vary. Not redeemable in person. All that fast talking shit. Yeah. Well, do you guys have anything else that we might want to add about Timmy Town? Maybe we should start calling it Pile Town.
I like Timmy Town. It still has the freaking enormous dragons, which don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the enormous dragons. They may not be the best win cons, but they are so fucking fun.
Yeah, no, they're very cool. I tried to make a Fury deck and it did not work very well in expeditions, but
what are you guys playing out there on the ladder?
Currently I am bouncing around. I was playing Swain TF for a while, but got tired of it, so I've mostly been playing the aggro Endure list. I just like Stalking Shadows too much. Like it's just Stalking Shadows feels so fucking good. They're probably gonna change it around a little bit, but
2 mana, 2 mana, draw 2 burst speed, only better.
Don't tell them, Adam. Don't tell them, and they won't notice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got like all my favorite cards in it. It's a great strategy. I do like having the backup win con of just Atrocity, a Dehu Endure for like 20 damage point blank. Great stuff.
What about you, Stan? What are you up to?
I've been bouncing back and forth between a lot of things as well, so I've been trying out played some MF Scouts, played some Fearsome Burn. I've been trying to lean more into the aggressive side of things because I still want to see sort of as much as what's going on as possible and start seeing where things stabilize, because I started trying out like the Elusive Shadow combo and dove right into like Tarek Lee Sin and just found the decks kind of fall flat. There's just too many things answering stuff like that, so I figured, well, might as well go fast, see as much as I can, and kind of play toward that end of things. Because honestly, I really did not like the Tarek Lee Sin deck. Like, even low in the ladder, it just didn't feel great. Hush knocks it out way too easily. You're just trying to do too many things at once. And then, same with the Elusive Shadow combo deck. Like, it's just, what the hell? They have a Hush. I'm dead. They healed a little bit. I can't do 20 damage in one turn.
So what I'm hearing is you played a bunch of decks that lose to Hush, and now you're playing decks that don't lose to Hush?
Exactly,
Yep,
yeah.
sounds about right.
That is the swap that I made.
How about you, Adam? What are you playing?
So I experimented with ASOL, big beefy boys, and I have toyed around with some aggro decks. I've been refining that Noxus Demacia aggro deck that I'm having fun with, and I always try Sharks. Sharks is not good, but I love it. But if I'm being perfectly honest, we all know that I have just been playing way too much Shadow Isles Failure Control and Karina Control, because I will never stop playing those decks. They are so fun.
Karina's a great card.
And Karina Control actually got a pretty big buff this expansion. it's very helpful to be able to cut some of the like medium creatures and just go and like I've even cut Elise at this point. I'm just like Unspeakable
Yeah, that's
Horror
smart.
has given me so much to do in the
Yeah,
early game
that
that
crash
I
is so
can
much better. Yeah.
just I'm running at five non-champions and 3 Vi, and that's it. Those are the only units in the deck. So Corona
No,
always hits. It's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think in general, that's probably where I'd want to be if I'm playing a control deck, is having basically no creatures, because there's a lot of creature answers right now in this meta.
That may also be why I'm not too scared of Hush. I'm running an 8 creature deck.
Exactly. No, exactly. I mean, that's a great way to counter Hush right now too. It's just having 3 creatures. Even I guess the big control deck right now at the top of the stack is Swain TF, and that's like 26 creatures, because like there's just so many ETB removal creatures. I would definitely want to be in the camp of having next to no creatures if I was playing right now, playing control right now at least. Yeah. Well, if we don't have anything else, I think it's gonna do it for us here at Run the Terra. Enterprises Incorporated Esquire. That's something new we're trying out. Definitely be on the lookout for our new deck. We'll be brewing it. Pop Rocks.
Wait a second. Does Run the Terra Enterprises Incorporated Esquire represent itself in legal matters?
Absolutely. We actually also have O.J. Simpson and there's not Johnny Cochran. Sorry,
No.
Johnny Cochran.
We have O.J.
We actually have
Simpson
O.J.
on our
Simpson.
legal team.
Honestly, we probably should, because I mean, sure, Johnny Cochran did a lot for him, but like OJ's just because. Anyways, we have OJ, we got Johnny, and we also got the late great Rob Kardashian, Senior, on our team. We're really just the dream team.
Rob Kardashian Senior
and also
just gets us our water though.
Yeah, and also the Dersh. We cannot forget the Dersh. He was somehow always made his way out of heinous sort of affiliation after heinous affiliation, but that's sort of the group we're rolling with. Like it or love it, they're the best trial lawyers that there are. But yeah, anyways, for Run the Terra Incorporated Enterprises Esquire, I've been Grandmaster Dan.
I've been Adam Munoz, DDS.
Nice, dude.
And I'm Stan Jarzewski, and I dropped out of Runeterra school.
And I'll be running for Runeterra president in 2024. Anyways, we'll still be with people next time, and we'll see you then.